Despite losing by almost 30 points to a top 10 team in the opening round of the Maui Invitational, the Louisville men's basketball team showed some improvement from their first three games. On today's episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast, we're going to talk about the Cardinals' opening round game of the Maui Invitational against the number 9 ranked Arkansas Razorbacks. We'll also discuss the University of Louisville women's basketball team going 1-2 down in the battle for Atlantis. So with that being said, let's get right on into the show.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode is brought to you by Upside. Download the free Upside app and use the promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. As always, I want to say thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. On today's episode of the show, we're going to begin by discussing the improvement that, or the improvements, plural, that the University of Louisville men's basketball team put on display against the number 9 ranked Arkansas Razorbacks. We'll also talk about the women's basketball team going 1-2 down in the battle for Atlantis. And then finally, we will conclude with the weekly mailbag segment. So starting out discussing the men's basketball team, obviously after beginning the Kenny Payne era 0-3, with those 3 losses being to mid-major opponents, the expectations for the Cardinals on Thanksgiving week down in Hawaii weren't necessarily based on results as much as they were centered around progression, continuing to grow and improve with each passing game, right? I think that most fans are expecting Louisville to likely leave Maui without a victory, probably go 0-3, maybe win the last game depending on who you play. But regardless, the objective for Maui, for the Cardinals, should be to consistently grow each and every game. I mentioned on yesterday's show the 3 things that I was looking for the Cardinals are, number 1, to display maximum effort. Number 2, to increase cohesiveness and cohesion on both sides of the court. And then finally, it was for other players to step up, not named L. Ellis, in the scoring column. So I think in the matchup against Arkansas, I thought that the effort was put on full display. And that was one of those things that the other aspects of the game, they come a little bit later on. It takes some time for teams to gel offensively and defensively, but simply there's no excuse for not putting forth maximum effort. I thought that the team did that throughout most of this game, and when the Cardinals, I believe it was 49-40, about halfway through the second half, Arkansas went on a 31-14 run to end the game. The last 10 minutes of the game, I think that, simply put, Louisville looked exhausted. They ran out of gas, and Arkansas took advantage of it. I believe went on an 18-0 run at one point. But regardless, I think that the fight displayed by Louisville was something to look at and at least be encouraged by. Look, here's the thing. It's going to be a long season. It's going to be a long journey. I do believe that Kenny Payne is the right guy for the job. If he is able to, get some major impact players from the transfer portal at the end of this season, in the offseason, who knows what may happen year 2. Granted, that's still months away, so we have a whole season to be played out. Look, I get it. It's easy to look ahead, especially when this season looks like it's going to be extremely tough. You're probably talking single-digit wins. Unfortunately, that seems to be the reality unless this team truly turns it around and is able to put it all together. So like I said, it's going to be a tough road. It's going to be a gradual um, improvement as well. It's not going to be something to where boom, one game, everything is fixed, and there you go. You're going to be hunting for a tournament spot. I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think it's just a matter of trying to see more improvement and progression game in, game out, while understanding that you're going to have some tough results, especially like tonight. Let's be honest, going up against a top 10 team in the country, despite being without one of their five-star guards, five-star freshman guards, Eric Musselman's team is being talked about as one of the best teams in the country, top 10, right? So I think that a lot of Louisville fans, if not all of them, believe that the Cardinals were probably going to lose this game by double digits. And it is what it is. Unfortunately, that's the case. But I think that some of the sequences in the game were encouraging. I think that there were instances to where I liked what I saw defensively. Granted, Arkansas did miss some open shots, but when the offensive struggles were really, really coming alive in that first half, especially early on. I mean, Louisville didn't score a single point until after the first media timeout. Even at that point, the Cardinals were within striking distance when Arkansas's offense started to wake up. The Cardinals were still there. So I think that obviously the offensive side of the ball, it's going to take some time. I was okay with the effort. I mean, I think that the effort was what it needed to be. I think, like I said, the team just ran out of gas. Now that is going to be a lack of depth, but at the end of the day, you still have those issues of, players being just ready to play. You have some younger guys that it's going to take some time to develop. You have some other players that joined late, like Fabio Basili. Um, but overall, look, I think that it's just at this point just trying to see improvement game in and game out. Obviously, things aren't going to change overnight. We saw a decent amount of improvement, especially in the effort category. Defensively, had its moments, but still there's some to be desired there. But offensively, still struggling. L. Ellis was 4 of 16 from the field with 11 points. The same issues. The Cardinals starting five outside of Ellis combined for 14 points. Look, that cannot happen. Sidney Curry, I understand it's still early in the season, but the Cardinals need him to step it up like he did at the end of last year. He only had 3 points. Brandon Huntley-Hatfield had 1 point. Jae'Lyn Withers was 1 for 4 with 7 points. Mike James 0 for 2 from the field with 3 points. Granted, one of the more encouraging signs offensively was true freshman Kamari Lands leading the Cardinals with 13 points. Saw some of his shots fall. You could see the confidence building throughout the game, which is encouraging because if Louisville is wanting to try to take that next step and continue to improve, you're going to need Kamari Lands to be one of those scoring options. J.J. Traynor did have 9 points, but that's what I'm saying. Outside of L. Ellis, you need consistent scoring threats. You need Sidney Curry, Brandon Huntley-Hatfield, and Jae'Lyn Withers to be consistent threats scoring the basketball. Same with Mike James. And then you have behind the starting five, you have the issues with depth. The Cardinals in this matchup, 22 turnovers to only 4 assists, I do believe. Which that's something that really is alarming. I think it's a reflection of a lack of offensive identity at this point, but also lack of a true point guard outside of L. Ellis. I know that, there was a lot of complaints in the offseason about the team not going to pick up a immediately ready guard that can lead an offense and create offense for others. And regardless of your stance on that topic, I think that it just goes without saying that is the case right now, is the lack of a point guard outside of L. Ellis. So it is what it is. Obviously, year one, it is a rebuild. The focus is seeing improvement each and every game. Hopefully, from this point out, we did see some improvement in the Arkansas game, but there's still a lot that needs to be improved on. So we'll see how the Cardinals come out against the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They will square off with them tomorrow. Actually, today. Today is Tuesday. Today at 2:30. So we will talk about that matchup after it happens, obviously. But for the next segment, I want to take a little bit of a step in to the battle for Atlantis for the women's basketball tournament, talking about that, where the Cardinals went 1-2, an up and down set of performances for Jeff Walz's team. We'll talk about those here in just a second after we talk about our friends and the title sponsor of the show, Upside. Look, inflation has us all thinking about different ways to cut back, whether it's driving less, dining out less, buying less from the grocery store, etc. We can all agree there's nothing fun about less. That's why I started using Upside. It's an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With Upside, I don't have to cut back because I get cash back on every purchase. To get started, download the free Upside app, use my promo code LOCKED, and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Users are earning more than $1 million every week collectively. That's probably why they have a 4.8 star rating on the App Store. So download the free Upside app and use the promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Once again, that's $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more using the promo code LOCKED. Hey, Cardinal fans, thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. So moving right on along into the battle for Atlantis, the Louisville Cardinals women's basketball team traveled down to the Bahamas over the weekend to square off in the battle for Atlantis. They went into the Invitational 3-0 and unfortunately lost 2 out of their next 3. I think that the ups and downs of the tournament show that there are still improvements that need to be made. There's work that needs to be done. This is obviously a team that still needs to gel. But you saw against Texas what can happen when the team does put it together and play together. They can beat almost anyone in the country. That game against Gonzaga was their first loss of the season. When you look at that game for the Cardinals, really the whole tournament was Hailey Van Lith trying to keep the Cards afloat. Now, granted, that game against Texas, it was more so than just Van Lith, but I think that one thing that is going to be focused on here from here on out is outside of Hailey Van Lith, who is going to help scoring the basketball. Now, granted, it is early on in the season, so the last thing that I want to do on November 22nd is overreact and act like the sky's falling. It's not. Is it optimal that the team went 1-2 down in the battle for Atlantis? Of course it's not. But at the end of the day, if there's one coach in college basketball that I trust to be able to turn the season around, I don't really even think turning the season around is the right terminology. I just think it's get this team to gel. It's the end of November. It's the first month of the season. I would expect Louisville to continue to improve. There are some new additions to this year's team. Obviously, Chrislyn Card, the Syracuse transfer, is continuing to find her role. Morgan Jones has been at some points really, really solid, and at other times really has kind of not made an impact in the stat sheet. Now, granted, I think that it's a matter of finding her role as well, but didn't necessarily play a ton in the second half against South Dakota State. I don't want to speculate, but I wonder if there is some type of an underlying injury or if it's something schematically that Jeff Walz is looking at, maybe thinking that he feels better with a certain lineup on the court. I'm interested to see, how the rotations are defined moving forward. But overall, in that game against Gonzaga, Hailey Van Lith had 18 points, Mikasa Robinson with 10, Morgan Jones with 12. Outside of that, Liz Dixon played 8 minutes, no points. Olivia Cochran with 8 points. Chrislyn Carr with 5. Overall, it was a game to where I think, honestly, this whole invitational showed that rebounding is going to be something of emphasis moving forward. The Cardinals were out-rebounded 50-31. They turned the ball over 20 times. Gonzaga turned the ball over 29. When you factor in that Louisville was out-rebounded by 19, going to overtime, Louisville only scored 6 points and Gonzaga had 18. So the Cardinals lost to a solid Gonzaga team that is going to be a very solid team out of the West Coast. The Cardinals then turned it around with a 71-63 victory, and the Cardinals' big three did what they needed to do. Morgan Jones, Hailey Van Lith, Chrislyn Carr scoring over 18 points each, respectively. Outside of that, though, no other Cardinals scored more than 5. So you're going to have to see Olivia Cochran, Josie Williams, Liz Dixon, Nyla Harris, Peyton Verhulst, Marissa Russell. I'm not saying that they have to score 20 points per game, all of them, but I think that you're going to have to see some of the scoring responsibilities disperse a little bit. The Cardinals were even with Texas in the rebounding category, and they won by 8 over a Texas team that also went 2-3 in this battle for Atlantis. But the same issue of rebounding popped up against South Dakota State on Monday evening. The Cardinals lost the their second game of the Invitational, 65-55. They were out-rebounded 41-24. Look, South Dakota State committed 8 more turnovers, but still that rebounding margin becoming more of a factor. And outside of Hailey Van Lith, no other players scored more than 7 points. Morgan Jones played 8 minutes, had 0 points. Josie Williams, 4 minutes, 0 points. I'm interested to see how the scoring responsibilities are going to basically fill in after Hailey Van Lith, because last year, obviously, having Emily Inksler, you have that rebounding help that you need. Obviously, the Cards still had issues with rebounding at times, but I think it's going to be by a committee approach. You know, you have 2 6'5" players in Liz Dixon and Josie Williams. You need to get more rebounding out of those two. Same with Olivia Cochran, Nyla Harris, Marissa Russell, the guard forward hybrids. You also need the guards to rebound well. So I think it's, like I said, it's a team effort. There's a lot to work on. The season's not over by any chance, obviously. Hailey Van Lith is your second leading rebounder, though. Hailey Van Lith is a very solid rebounding player for her size. So I'm not saying this to disrespect Hailey at all. I just think that the Cardinals need to ultimately become more involved on attacking the glass, putting themselves in better positions to rebound, so on and so forth. And I forgot to mention it in the other segment as well. That's another aspect of the game that the men's basketball team needs to work on, is boxing out and rebounding well. So rebounding the basketball is probably going to be the focal point, that and scoring outside of Hailey Van Lith, who's going to score outside of Hailey Van Lith. So it's early on in the season. I have no worries about the women's basketball team. Jeff Walz is one of the best coaches in the country. He has a great coaching staff. There's great players on this team. It's just going to be a matter of gelling, getting that camaraderie and cohesiveness on the court. I expect, Morgan Jones, Chrislyn Carr, Josie Williams, the 3 transfers, to be able to continue to put it together and start to produce more. So I don't necessarily have many concerns. I think that it's early on in the season. It wasn't a great trip to Atlantis. I think that the weaknesses were put on full display. But hey, look, it shows what you need to work on. And by this time next month, I would venture out and say that the women's basketball team is going to have made large strides toward becoming a better team. And hopefully this serves as a wake-up call moving forward. So, for the final segment of the show, we're going to dive into the weekly mailbag. Oh, there's some great questions. We'll talk about those here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at BetOnline. Let me pull up the logo for you. There you go. So BetOnline has been your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis this season. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and even esports. We've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting needs. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. So diving into the final segment of the show, the weekly mailbag. We just talked about the women's basketball team. So let's start out the mailbag with a women's basketball question. Are you nervous for the scoring outside of Hailey Van Lith for the season moving forward? Not really. I think that the potential is there. I think, you have players that have been solid scorers at a previous stop, like Morgan Jones, Chrislyn Carr, Josie Williams. Olivia Cochran is solid. Liz Dixon, I think, can get to the 8 to 9 points per game mark. Peyton Verhulst is taking that next step. I could see Nyla Harris continuing to improve scoring over the course of the season. Same with Marissa Russell. Look, it's 6 games into the season. I'm not going to overreact. Sure, there are some areas of improvement, but I'm not necessarily concerned moving forward. The Louisville men's basketball team misses out on yet another 5-star prospect, this time in A.J. Johnson, a player that Louisville was supposedly close to being in the driver's seat for. On decision day, they weren't even in the mix. Are you nervous with A.J. Johnson now out of the picture, and also seemingly Isaiah Miranda? It's not ideal. Obviously, missing out on a 5-star guard who, in my opinion, like I've gone on record saying, it has one of the highest ceilings in the class, and then Isaiah Miranda, who has one of the highest ceilings in the class as well, a high 4-star rated prospect. Missing out on both of those guys, seemingly, it's not ideal. I'm not going to spin it in any such way. It is what it is, unfortunately, especially with 2 4-star guys coming in, and Caleb Glenn and Curtis Williams. I think those are 2 tremendous players, but it's obvious that the team is going to need help moving forward. So I don't think it's necessarily panic mode just yet. I think it emphasizes the reality that Kenny Payne and company are going to have to absolutely hit it out of the park in the transfer portal. You're going to have to get about 3 to 4 immediately eligible guys that can produce. You need to probably get 4, maybe even 5, depending on who leaves, who stays, so on and so forth. Look, there is a big roster makeover that is needed. So, I think that we'll see how things go, but the transfer portal is definitely much needed. So, as it pertains to football recruiting, do you get nervous with signing day approaching and Reuben Owens possibly going to the Ohio State-Michigan game on an official visit? As far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any confirmation that he is actually going to be on an official visit for that game in Columbus this weekend. I mean, it's possible. I've heard the rumors. You never feel comfortable. I mean, obviously, it could just be a matter of him enjoying the recruiting process and going to visit one of the top rivalries in college football. So I understand why he would go, but hey, stranger things have happened. So, of course, it does make you a little nervous because Ohio State has, gotten some Louisville commits to flip in the past, and they're probably not, it's probably not never going to happen again. Like, it's probably going to happen again eventually because Ohio State, you can compete for a national championship, so on and so forth. So, I mean, it makes me a little nervous. Hopefully, last weekend being in attendance at Louisville helps out a little bit. But, it makes me a little nervous just because stranger things have happened. Moving into the final question of the mailbag. This is a volleyball question. I like this question. Can the Cardinals win the national championship with Anna DeBeer not at full health? For those who are not big volleyball fans, Anna DeBeer suffered an injury at Stanford earlier on in the season, missed over a month, came back a couple weeks ago, and seemingly it seems like Danny Busbaum, Kelly, and company have kind of been playing it safe. To answer the question, they can win a national championship without Anna DeBeer fully healthy, but they could definitely use her, on that outside opposite of Claire Chaussee. It's a huge it would be a huge boost to the team because she adds another element. I mean, she's an All-American. Anytime that you can have an All-American on the court, even though you have multiple All-Americans on the court, obviously it pays off because you're going to have to possibly go up against teams like Texas, Pittsburgh again, Wisconsin, so on and so forth. So, I mean, you could win a national championship because this team is very solid. I mean, without Anna DeBeer fully healthy, but I would feel much more confident if she was, in fact, fully healthy. So, but that's going to wrap up this week's mailbag. It's going to wrap up today's episode of the show. Everyone have a great day. Go Cards. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.